Okay, I want to get specific in this episode. I want to go through exactly what kind of acoustic treatment you should put in your home studio, where you should position it to improve both your recordings and your mixes, and how many panels you actually need for massive improvement. Let's discuss. Welcome back to the Home Studio Pro podcast. We're helping you create professional sounding music from your home studio. I'm your host, Colin Cross, and today I want to give you kind of an end-all be-all episode on acoustic treatment. If this is the only thing you ever watch on acoustic treatment, it would be enough for you to have a plan on what you should do for your home studio for it to sound amazing. We're going to get very specific into exactly what kind of acoustic treatment you should put into your home studio, how many panels you need, where you should position them, and specifically we're going to be going through 4 levels of acoustic treatment. And what I love about this plan is that if you do level 1, that might be all you ever need to do for your purposes in your home studio, your goals with your home studio. But if you decide to upgrade or level up your home studio over time, you move on to level 2, level 3, level 4, every dime that you spent for level 1 could be a part of level 2, level 3, and level 4. So you won't waste a single penny on acoustic treatment because it's all part of this larger picture. Very specific plan and roadmap so that you can be comfortable and confident that you're never wasting a single dollar, which I know as a home studio musician, I care a whole lot about. So I try to be very intentional with it and very specific so that you're not left feeling aimless or confused about acoustic treatment, lost in the weeds. We're just giving you an actionable plan so you know exactly what to do. Now, in this episode, we're going to be looking at some pictures, some images that kind of show you how I'm configuring these things. If you're listening to the audio version, I will also be describing them as well. But if you would like to see those images, you can check out the video or you can download my newly updated Home Studio Pro checklist at thebandguide.com/Home Studio Pro checklist. And even if you're watching the video version, you can download that so you could quickly reference back to this anytime as well. Plus, it has the other 3 stages where we're talking about how to create a home studio that makes creating professional sounding music easy. Now, this guide is living and breathing as I'm teaching this stuff and figuring out the best version of it, which is why this is newly updated, and it's going to continue to be updated as I continue to figure out the best way to teach this stuff. So if you download it now, you'll continuously get improved versions as I update them, and if you download this in the future, you probably have what I consider to be the best version of it. So thebandguide.com/Home Studio Pro checklist, completely free Home Studio Pro checklist. It's really going to help you out. But let's go ahead and get into this, starting with what kind of acoustic treatment should you put in your home studio. So when it comes to acoustic treatment, there's 2 main things that you need to be considering. The first is the placement. Intentionally placing your panels so they actually absorb the reflections before they get back in your microphone if you're recording or your ears if you're mixing. We'll talk about placement a bunch as we're going through the 4 levels in just a minute. So for now, let's focus on the second thing, which is the depth of the panel. The depth of the panel directly correlates to how much of the frequency response of the reflections is absorbed. And so if you have a very shallow panel, then the upper mid-range, the bright frequencies, the high frequencies, those can be absorbed pretty well, but everything below that, the mid-range, the low end, will just bounce through that panel and come back in the microphone almost as if there was no acoustic treatment there. So you can still get a big buildup in the muddy and boxy parts of the recording, and it won't functionally be actually giving you any acoustic treatment for those frequencies. So you need your panels to be deep enough to cover what's called a broad band of frequencies. So my clear recommendation for your home studio is that you want your acoustic treatment to be at least 3.5 to 4 inches deep. Now, 3.5 inches, because if you want to go out and build your own acoustic treatment, you want to just go to Lowe's or Home Depot, I'd recommend getting Rockwell insulation that's R15, something like that. That's 3.5 inches deep. That's going to be your best just over-the-counter bet for insulation for acoustic panels if you want to build them. If you're buying them from a company, typically they come in 2-inch increments, so that's typically 4 inches. Now, the one caveat with this is that deeper is better. If you really want to get down into the low end, then you want to be aiming more like 5.5 to 6 inches deep, if not deeper. But then you start to have a consideration of both budget in terms of money budget, but also space budget. Can you afford the space to have a bunch of 6-inch deep panels throughout your studio? If you can't, then a combination is probably the way to go. So for the main panels in your home studio, you want to be at least 3.5 inches deep. If you can go deeper, that's great, but 3.5 inches is a really good starting point. The majority of your panels being 3.5 inches deep is a good place to be. Getting deeper is good in some intentional places, and we're going to look at that specifically as we go through these levels. So Let's go and start going through these levels, starting with level number 1, which is focus on absorbing your early reflections. Your early reflections are the biggest troublemakers when it comes to recording or mixing. It is a sound that is coming out, bouncing off the wall, and coming straight back into the microphone. And so by setting up our acoustic treatment and our position intentionally, we can minimize these early reflections and we'll get a cleaner, clearer recording if we're recording and a cleaner, clearer image of what's coming out of our speakers if we're mixing. So there's 2 different configurations for this depending on if you're recording or mixing. And if you're recording, I recommend creating what's called a dead corner. Now with this, I recommend a 3-panel setup. You'd have 2 broadband panels and they would be positioned behind you in a corner. So you would stand in a corner of a room to record your vocals or record your acoustic guitar. You could be sitting, but you'd be in the corner facing out into the room. And you would put your acoustic panels behind you so that when the microphone's pointed at you, think of a microphone like a flashlight. It's going to be picking up what that flashlight sees. If you shine a flashlight from that microphone, that's what it's going to be picking up. So if you capture the reflections from behind you, they're not going to bounce straight back into the microphone. Now, that's 2 of the panels, but I also highly recommend a 3rd panel here, and this is the cloud above you. If you're standing in particular to sing, for example, then the ceiling might actually be the closest reflective surface to you. So by treating that with an acoustic panel, you're going to get a cleaner recording. Now, with your cloud, with the panel mounted from your ceiling, it is one of the best places, if not the best place, to put bass trapping because you aren't losing floor space from it. So you could have a 6-inch panel or a 5.5-inch deep panel and clean up both the low end of your recording because you're not going to have that low end bouncing back and forth between the floor and the ceiling. And it's going to do a great job capturing all the mid-range and upper mid-range, all of that. It's going to do a better job across all of the frequency spectrum or near all the frequency spectrum. So that's massively going to improve your recording. So that's a 3-panel setup. That's level 1 for recording. Back to a wall, a panel on either side of you in the corner, and a cloud above you. If you can't do the cloud, I totally get it, but if you can, it's worth it. Just consider that. Okay, if you want to set this configuration up into a mixing setup, I'd recommend a 4-panel setup, which is basically the same thing, but you have your panels on either side of you where they are capturing the first reflection out of the opposite speakers. So the sound is coming from your right speaker. It's going to bounce off your left wall, and that's going to make its way into your ear. It's going to come out of your left speaker, bounce off your right wall, make its way into your ear. So if you set up acoustic panels at that point of first reflection to your left and right, that's going to really clean up your perspective coming out of your speakers. When it comes to the cloud, I would recommend 2 if you can swing it so that you can get a wide enough amount to be the width of your speakers. So you're actually capturing most of those reflections, not just what's directly over your head. So 2 panels. So this is kind of a 4-panel configuration if you're focusing on this for mixing. Now, if you want to take this a step further, you can put your side panels, the broadband panels on your left and your right, on some sort of feet, some sort of legs, like Music City Acoustics makes these easel stands that are really cool that allow you to just take your acoustic panel and mount it into this easel stand, and then it's at head height, but then you can also move it around in your room. So you could pull it up closer to you just for recording, still kind of have that dead corner setup, if you will, but then you could put it back out to the sides for mixing. And that gives you some flexibility, which gives you more value out of the acoustic treatment that you already have. So instead of having to have 6 or 8 or 10 panels, you could get by with just 4 panels, being very intentional about where you're placing them. And the flexibility of something that functionally turns into what's called a gobo is very, very helpful. Okay, so that's level 1. We're capturing our early reflections, drastically cleaning up our recordings and our mixing perspective. Let's go and move on to level 2, which is what I call the portable booth. This is just taking that same setup. So imagine the same exact recording setup, and we are functionally doubling it. So instead of having 2 panels that are directly behind you and 1 panel above you, I would add 1 more panel above you to make sure that you're really capturing all that area of reflected energy above you. And I would put 2 more panels on those easel type stands or some sort of stands that get them up to the right height, because again, placement really matters, and get them up to the right height. Well, now you have acoustic treatment all around you. 2 panels that are installed on the wall behind you, 2 panels that are hung on the ceiling above you, but then you also have 2 stands where you could move them around. You can put them out into your room if you don't need them while you're recording, or you could take them away if you want a livelier sounding recording. But when they're up close, they're going to capture more of not those early reflections, but those 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th reflections where the sound is just kind of bouncing around the room and you're getting that reverb sound, that decay time sound of the room. those panels are going to start to capture some of that before it makes its way back to you. So you're going to start getting really dry, tight sounding recordings, which can be massive. That decay time right after, once you start really compressing your vocals, really doing a lot of processing, it can really bring up some of that room reverb, that decay time of your room. And by adding in these second and third, or third and fourth panels in terms of the panels around you, can really, really clean that up. And having one more panel above you is just going to give you better absorption above you and capture more of the reflections from that sound bouncing directly off the ceiling above you. Now, if you want to do this in more of a mixing configuration, you would still have your two gobos to the left and right of you capturing your earliest reflections, but I would take these two new panels and put them behind your desk. So now if you want to just record at your desk, you could just pull one gobo up directly behind you, and you now have kind of a dead corner right by where you're recording. This is when we start to get into the really, really easy side of recording, because you could just pull that panel over to you in 1 second, and now you're ready to record vocals, and you're going to have a really tight, fairly dry recording because you're capturing a lot of what's going on right around you really, really well. And with this configuration, I would just have the two cloud panels above the desk, centered above the desk, and they're going to be 6.5 or 6-ish inches deep. So they're going to be capturing a good amount of that low end. And the panels behind the desk are going to help you capture some of those panels from you singing towards the wall, right? Which is going to help both with early reflections and with some of those second and third reflections that are bouncing around the room a little bit more. And they're going to clean up the imaging of the speakers, because your speakers aren't going to be kind of resonating off the wall right behind them. So this is level 2. This is the portable booth. So again, we have around 4 panels around the room and 2 panels on the ceiling in this configuration. And I highly recommend with this kind of configuration that you have at least 2 panels that are movable, kind of in that gobo fashion, using that easel style stand or something like that, so that you have flexibility, so that again, you can get the most out of the panels. You can, instead of having 8, 10, 12 panels, you can have these 6 panels that you can move around in the room in a way that's really intentional and flexible. Okay. Level 3, this is what I'm calling full room coverage, and this is great. This is when we basically could record roughly anywhere in the room, and we're going to have pretty good coverage. The idea here is that we're now treating all 4, assuming you're in a standard room, we're treating all 4 of the walls with fairly even coverage. So we now have wall panels behind the desk. If you're in a traditional desk setup, we have panels on the left and the right of us at the earliest reflections, but then also capturing and minimizing some of those second, third, fourth, fifth reflections that are going on behind us, and then panels directly behind us. And that's huge when it comes to mixing on speakers, because the early reflections are very big, but we also have the sound coming out of the speaker and bouncing off the wall directly behind us, coming back towards us. So capturing those reflections behind you is going to be better. In my opinion, if you are mixing in your home studio and you're dedicated to mixing on speakers, this is kind of the first starting point where you really have enough coverage to get a really accurate representation of what's coming out of your speakers. You're still going to have some issues in the low end, because even with the cloud being those deeper panels, we don't have enough true bass trapping. We're not really capturing the low end well enough. So there's still going to be buildup in the low end, but you would have a fairly accurate picture of what's going on in the mid-range and above. And so this is a great setup for mixing on speakers. And you could record anything roughly anywhere in the room and not have to worry too much about any reflections. You're not going to have a long decay time of the room, so you're not going to hear that room reverb, and you're not going to have those early reflections that are really constructive or destructive, kind of altering the sound of what it is you're recording. So this is a great setup, but we can still take it even a step further, and that's level 4. This is total coverage. And if you're looking at the image version of this and the guide or on the video, you'll see here that I just kind of have a top-down image because it was hard to get the right angle to show all these panels. But the idea here is basically that you double the amount of cloud coverage. So now you're really getting into the low end because you have a lot more panels that are focused in that deep range. And you're also starting to get into deeper corner trap panels, so panels intentionally placed in the corner to absorb more low end in the corners. The corners are a very effective way to start dealing with low end buildup, because where 2 walls meet is where you tend to have the most bass energy. And so if you can trap it in those corners with deep panels in the corners, then you're going to get a much cleaner low end in your room. So this is where you're really starting to set up a room that is excellent for mixing, excellent for mastering. You have total coverage around the whole room, and you're intentionally working towards capturing the low end in a way that's giving you an accurate picture of what's coming out of your monitors in terms of the full frequency spectrum. So this is the whole shebang. This is like what a lot of people think they have to have great acoustic treatment is this whole shebang setup. And this is a pretty hefty setup. If you build this or buy it, it's going to be a few $1,000s worth of acoustic treatment. You don't necessarily have to work up to this. You can, and if you get there over time, it's not going to be like one huge paycheck that's super noticeable, and that's cool. But also, if you're working in a home studio, you could totally get by. If you're willing to mix on headphones, you could totally get by with level 1 or level 2, where you just have a few acoustic panels, 2 to 6 acoustic panels intentionally placed and with some flexibility, either having them on like easel type stands or whatever, where they're functionally gobos that you can move around in the room. And then you can get really dry recordings by putting all your panels kind of over in this one little corner, or space them out and mix decently well on speakers, as long as you're still willing to check on your headphones and things like that. So to me, level 1, level 2 is a great starting point. If you have no acoustic panels, just start with level 1. Go very, very simple. Get 2 panels, put them in the corners behind you and one above you for recording. Staying in that corner, you're going to get much cleaner recordings for your vocals, things like that. If you're mixing, put them out on the side walls and above you to clean up the reflections off the ceiling. If you want to scale up over time, we'll move up into level 2. We'll create a portable booth type setup where you have a couple of gobo panels that you can move in and out and create a tighter, deader recording by having them up in front of you while you still have those 2 panels behind you. We'll have an extra panel overhead to really clean up the reflections off the ceiling. And then if you're in a mixing configuration, you could have them off to the sides, behind the desk, and above you, and that's going to really clean up your position at the mixing desk. But then you could grab one of those panels from off the wall next to you or on the stand next to you and slide it up behind you to get a tighter, deader recording for when you're recording vocals or whatever. And then from there, we just move up into full room coverage and then total coverage, where we're really trying to capture the entire frequency spectrum, deal with those low-end issues, clean it up so that we can accurately assess what's going on in mixing. If you're dead set on mixing, I would work towards at least full room coverage, if not total coverage. But if you're willing to focus learning mixing on headphones and just check or just mix on speakers some, then I think you could make it work with any of these 4 configurations. Okay. 3.5-inch panels, if not deeper. If you can do clouds that are deeper, that's great. 5.5, 6 inches, that's great. Don't worry too much beyond that. Just be intentional with this. Start out with 2 to 3 panels and let it build over time. Hopefully this is very clear and you feel empowered, like you know what you want to do in terms of acoustic treatment for your space. You know what's right. Every dollar that you would spend on this setup is one that you can continue to use, because you could just add more panels in the future if you want to continue to expand what you're doing. But you shouldn't wait to do level 4 and not do level 1 in the meantime, because all of your recordings suffer when you have no acoustic treatment. All of your mixes suffer when you have no acoustic treatment, unless you're mixing solely on headphones. But if you have no acoustic treatment, then what's getting back in your microphone is getting some frequencies built up into it, some frequencies that are kind of canceling out. You're getting extra room reverb that isn't necessarily the right sound for the mix. It just is throwing off your recording. So being intentional with your acoustic treatment, you don't have to go from 0 to level 4. You can go 0 to level 1 and get a huge improvement, or go 0 to level 2 and get a massive improvement, and scale over time if you want. But you could also just live at level 1 or level 2 if that's what makes sense to you and you haven't wasted thousands of dollars on acoustic treatment because it wasn't the right fit for you, your goals, and your home studio. Okay. Got pretty into the weeds there. Hopefully you've downloaded the Home Studio Pro checklist so you can reference back to this anytime. It's completely free from thebandguide.com/Home Studio Pro checklist, all one word. I really think that this systematic thought process and approach to acoustic treatment is the way to go. That way you don't feel like you have to do everything right now. You can start with level 1 and just build over time as it makes sense to you. If this video was helpful to you, if you feel like you understand acoustic treatment and have an actionable plan for acoustic treatment, please let me know in the comments below. Or if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are, leave a review or a comment there and let me know that this was helpful, that you're enjoying this podcast. It makes a huge difference. Okay. I would love to hear from you. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm going to take a little break from the podcast for just the next couple of weeks while I wrap up acoustic treatment in my home studio. I will be documenting that on the YouTube channel, so do keep checking back. We're just going to be doing some traditional YouTube videos showing how I built the wall behind me and building acoustic panels and all that stuff, and some of the products that I'm adding into the space. So definitely check back for that. And then as soon as I get that wrapped up, I will be back with the podcast again to start talking about step number 3 in the Home Studio Pro checklist, podcast where we're getting into the gear for your home studio. And I have a very, I think, different approach to thinking about this and teaching this than I've seen it talked about before. And we're going to get into the weeds about picking the right interface and the right microphone and all that stuff. So I think it's going to be really, really helpful to you. If you enjoy the podcast so far, be sure to, again, leave a review so that I know to keep making them. But definitely check back in a couple weeks when we're back talking about gear. Okay, talk soon.
One thing at a time.